What's up, gamers? Last week we got the announcement from Anbernic that the RG556 is indeed on its way, and they announced that by giving us a short gameplay trailer. And one of my biggest critiques of that trailer was that it only showed Android and PS2 emulation. Well, this Monday morning they're back with another trailer that shows more gameplay footage, but there's still some curious things going on here, and I want to talk about it today. So let's get into it. One of the first things I will say is that I am really liking the look of this device. I think that it looks like it's designed really well. And even though we haven't gotten a good look at the back yet, at least not an official look at the back, I do want to point out that you can see in this image that there is, along the top edge, there's a power button, a volume rocker, a little LED light to indicate that it's on, and also we see that there's an exhaust port there at the top to let out some of that heat, which is an indication that this has active cooling. And on the bottom right of the device there, we have start and select buttons, and on the left side we have what looks to be the Anbernic logo on that far left bottom button, and I think that's really cool and gives it a more premium feel that they would have their logo on what is probably like the home button, the menu button. I mean, that's what PlayStation does, that's what Xbox does. This other small button at the bottom here has some kind of image on it that I can't quite make out, and I mean, I've looked at it from several different shots in this trailer, and it looks like a bow and arrow. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know if it's a share button of some kind or what, but I can't figure that part out. I like the LED lights around the sticks, but overall, even the color choices here, even though there's only two choices, I can't decide which one to get. Let me know in the comments which one you think is better. The translucent blue, which is like sort of like a purpley blue almost, or just this classic black. And I'm kind of leaning towards the black because black never really goes out of style, right? Whereas some of these translucent colors and the way that looks can sometimes start to look dated after a while. But let's check out this gameplay footage. It starts off with God of War Chains of Olympus at 3x on the PSP. And I will note that they point out that the PSP and the PlayStation Vita are playing at 3x and 2x respectively. They do not indicate any kind of up-resing on any of the other systems. So I'm going to assume that PS2, for example, is only playing at 1x, that is to say a native resolution. And they're really leaning heavily into this PS2 emulation here in this trailer again, and that makes sense because the PS2 is technically the greatest selling console of all time, and a lot of people really love that system. And all the games that they've shown off look like in these small clips that is playing pretty much flawlessly on this handheld. I mean, look at the fluidity of Armored Core here in this clip. Then we get to this 3DS emulation here, and this is where I look at this and I think, did you see that stutter there? Let me go back again and just watch this. Right here, there's a little bitty stutter, and right here, it stutters just for a split second. And I'm not playing the audio, but if you had the audio going, you would be able to hear the stutter in the audio too, right there and right here. Now, stutters are going to happen sometimes in emulation, but in platformers like Super Mario Bros., you really don't want that stuttering because it can really mess up the timing of your jumps. But the other 3DS titles they show off look smooth as butter. Look at Hyrule Warriors. I don't see anything going on there. It's a little bit harder to tell in Street Fighter 4 because a lot of times there are like pauses and slowdowns in fighting games. But then we get some Wii and Nintendo GameCube emulation. Twilight Princess is one of those that they show off. I do not like that they have this stretched out. I would rather see that in 4x3. It really bothers me seeing some games stretched like that, like Ridge Racer 4. That looks terrible in my opinion. I would rather see black bars on the sides. And then we get these 2x PlayStation Vita clips here. Honestly, a little too short to really be able to tell much about it. And then back to PSP with God of War, and this one is running really smooth. You can see in the top corner, it's going at 61 frames per second in a scene that's very hard to render. One of the other things that I wanted to point out in here, you can kind of tell, especially like here in the 3DS games, the rumor about these is that they're going to come with an OLED display. And that is not officially confirmed, but it is the rumor. And I kind of agree with that rumor at this point because I'm looking at this now. The black on the right side above and below that second 3DS screen looks really black. It looks like OLED to me. I couldn't really tell in some of the PS2 stuff that they were showing off last week, but that stuff wasn't designed with HDR and OLED in mind. And this wasn't either, but because you've got some of the screen not being used in this shot, you can tell that those blacks are pretty deep. And I don't really see any light blooming around the edges of the lit part of the screen either, which would indicate that, yeah, this is probably OLED. And that's really cool. And I wanted to point out the bottom edge of this because you can kind of tell in this translucent color that we have a couple of inputs here. And in the middle, it looks like we're getting a 3.5mm headphone jack. To the right of that, it looks like a USB-C port. And to the right of that, it looks like we have a micro SD card slot. And a couple of speculations regarding those things. One is that this does not appear to have an HDMI out. It could, however, have USB-C out. And right now I've seen a lot of comments of people complaining that it's a missed opportunity, that it doesn't have HDMI out. But if they can consolidate those things into one port, obviously they're going to cut cost, especially since this is pretty much known as a budget brand and they're trying to put an OLED display in here, supposedly. They have to cut costs somewhere to keep the price down. And the other thing is that it appears we have one micro SD card slot, which indicates to me, especially since we've got Android games playing on here, that this is going to ship with Android, probably Android 13. My question is, if that's the case, will this even have a stock Anbernic Linux-based OS? Because one of the biggest critiques against Anbernic is that their firmware is kind of crummy. And they may be trying to just work around that by simply having an Android-based operating system. Also, this would cut costs because they're not having to pay someone to develop an OS for this device, and they don't have to ship it with a second port and a second SD card that has their OS on it. So the example I would give is like the 353V. That has Anbernic's stock OS and Android. Android is on the device on internal memory, but Anbernic's firmware is on the first SD card. So my speculation, and again, this is just me thinking, I don't have any inside information on this at all, is that there's no HDMI port because they're cutting costs, and maybe the USB-C port could double as a display port. And two, that this is going to have just Android on it. No Anbernic firmware, which I am afraid is going to limit the ability to have custom firmware options. A lot of people are fine with Android OS, and that's cool. If you like that, great. But there's a lot of other people that really like Linux operating systems, that really like to have custom firmware, that really just like that open source option to do those things. And just simply based on visually what I can observe from these two very short trailers, it is possible that we're only getting Android on this device. But we don't know because we still don't have any official specs on this thing. And I'm afraid they're biding their time before they give us that. Chinese New Year starts soon, and I just want to show you Anbernic's official site real quick. They have this displayed up on their real site. The Chinese New Year starts on February 1st, which is this Thursday. They also have down here a survey for the coming RG556, and you can click on this and you can fill out just kind of a little questionnaire about what you think, which color would you prefer, what you think the price is going to be, and any suggestions that you have for this, which kind of tells me that they don't have all the details figured out yet. And I've never seen them do this before, so I'm a little shocked. I think that we could still be 2 or 3 months away from actually seeing the release of this. And these two trailers that we've gotten, which are both about 2 minutes long, normally that would be one 4 to 5 minute trailer where they are showing off what their device can do and gameplay from that device. So the fact that they have split this into two, it really does make me think that this was one trailer and they're like, no, we're not quite ready. Let's see what people think. So they split this thing in half and made it into 2 trailers to kind of buy themselves some time. So while I had initially thought that this thing would be shipped before Chinese New Year, it's actually looking more and more like pre-orders might not be until late February, maybe even March, and then it might ship out in March or even April. So again, these are just speculations. I don't know anyone over there at Anbernic. I do have an affiliate link to Anbernic if you want to click on that down in the description and go check out their site and maybe check out their products and maybe pick up something else that you like that is out currently. That would really help out my channel and I'd appreciate it a lot. But that's about it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more gaming goodness. Stay kind and encouraging out there, and I'll catch you on the flippity flip.